Hi, I'm Fred Joyle. I'm an entrepreneur. I started 1-800-Dentist and ran it for many years. I'm actually involved in another business. I'm also the author of Superbold, my latest book on how to cultivate the superpower of boldness. Today, we're going to talk about how generosity can build your boldness muscle. We're also going to talk about how mining your regrets in life can help you motivate yourself to take bold action in life. And we're also going to talk about how I went from a skinny, four-eyed wrestler in high school to somebody who beat Sir Richard Branson in chess, and he called me the C word as a byproduct of that, and much more. So stay tuned.
Welcome back to part 2 of our delicious conversation with Fred Joyle. He is the author of Superbold, From Underconfident to Charismatic in 90 Days. He's the guy who was originally behind 1-800-Dentist that went from 30 grand startup to over $1 billion in revenue. There's a lot of great stories about who Fred is and what he's done. We're going to dive back into what he's been talking about, which is his book, Superbold, and really exploring what that means. In part 1, by the way, if you didn't hear part 1, just go back on your player and you'll find part 1 of this show. We talked about what it really means to be bold, that bold is not something you're born with. It's something you can train yourself with. And that part of that process is about mining the regrets, taking a look at what you've regretted in your life where you didn't have boldness, and then doing the bold acts, not for you in this moment, but so that you can build this boldness account moving forward and can feed into that account and allow yourself to be even more courageous. And it's these little steps of boldness as you go forward, and that you have to sort of dose yourself around that so that you can eventually get to a place where you burn the ships and do what you need to do, because it transforms not only you, but everybody you meet. That's kind of where we went in part 1. In part 2, I want to talk about the strategies, the specific strategies, Fred, for being more bold, particularly when a person doesn't feel confident. And one of the things that I found fascinating in our previous conversation, not in part 1, but in a conversation we had that was not recorded for air, you and I talked about improv comedy and how you've used improv comedy and how you use improv comedy to help your clients. Those two things, for most people, will seem like business, leadership, improv comedy doesn't match. Tell us how it matches and why it's important.
Well, if you don't understand improv comedy as a concept, basically it's when 3, 4, 5 people will get on a stage and create a scene based on an audience's suggestion, and it will have a whole arc to it. It'll and an ending, and usually be funny, but they're creating it in the moment, and people sit there and say, how is this possible? I've seen improv people, they'll create a song in the moment based on a suggestion. And I started going to improv comedy at the company called The Groundlings in Los Angeles, which is where amazing people came from. Will Ferrell came from The Groundlings. Lisa Kudrow on Friends came from The Groundlings. And I became fascinated with it. And I said, well, how can I learn this? Because it looks like so much fun. But it just seems impossible. Mm-hmm. And then I started taking the classes. And just as a side note, if you're trying to develop one of the most important life skills there is, which is to be able to speak and communicate effectively and interestingly, engagingly in front of a group of people, nothing will train you for this better than improv comedy. Mm-hmm. Because you will learn to trust your brain and learn to stay in a highly excited state while being relaxed internally. And it's an incredibly powerful place to be, because most people don't trust themselves in creative situations, and in front of people. They clam up, they struggle, and that's that's a business skill. If you're trying to raise money, you better be able to speak with passion about your business. And this is where you see this too, Dov. Entrepreneurs, they fall apart.
Yeah.
They're so low key presenting their business, and they think that the slideshow and the numbers are going to sell it. What's going to sell it is them.
Yes.
The investors bet on the jockey, not on the horse. They want to know that you're the one who's going to do it and present it in an exciting way so customers can't resist it.
It's true.
So
I love improv personally. I'm a big fan of it. We've actually had the director of Second City on here, who has become a friend actually, and his book is called Yes and which is the principle of improv comedy, is that something is thrown at you, and instead of shutting down or saying no, you say yes and. So talk to us about the direct application of that. Obviously you need those abilities to jump in and do what you need to do when you need to do it, when somebody throws something hard at you, particularly in a pitch, let's say that. But talk to us about it in the direct application to boldness.
So when they started teaching me improv comedy, the whole first week of classes were nonverbal. There was, and I'm thinking, well, this is a lot easier than I thought. I don't have to come up with any dialogue or any words or anything like that. And so when I was creating Superbold, when I was creating the book, I said, I'm going to apply the principles of improv. Now, one of them is yes and. You're going to add something, but you're not that concerned about the outcome. You're concerned about making the most of the next moment, the next thing you say, the next thing you do. But it's very gradual. So I built the exercises in the book starting non-verbally. Smile at 5 strangers a day.
Yes.
And don't worry if they smile back. You're actually aiming for them to not smile back. You're going to find the person who doesn't smile back, and you're not going to take it on. You're going to realize they could be in any sort of headspace, just like you are sometimes. Sometimes people smile at me, and I'm in a whole other place. Like this could be the worst day of somebody's life. Mm-hmm. They could have just gotten fired. They just could have gotten, broken up with somebody. That, something horrible could have happened, or they're just trapped in their own world, or they just don't smile at anybody. They get bad teeth. They're too inhibited. I found that I love talking to people in elevators, because it's like a rule that you're not supposed to talk in elevators for some reason. So I do it constantly. And everybody talks. By the time we're done, the whole elevator is talking to each other, because there's no reason not to. We're all human beings, and society has deceived itself into thinking that we can be this soloist going through life, and we can live all our lives without human contact. I think social media should be called anti-social media, because it is teaching you nothing about human connection. It is creating incredibly bad social habits. But that's a sidebar I couldn't resist going on to.
It's okay. I'm with you.
And so what you're trying to do is build your boldness muscle. Now you're going to say hi when you smile at somebody and not expect them to say anything back. And it's the same thing with improv comedy. You don't create a whole scene. You create a quick interaction, 3 lines back and forth. And then gradually you learn to just be generous. And that's the other thing about it, is you're not expecting the best improv people don't try to take control of the scene. They just add. Yes. And we're in a boat in Central Park. You don't say, Yeah, and then they told everybody to bring the boats back in, and we're not supposed to be on a boat anymore. That's a no and, right? You stop the scene. You say yes, and suddenly it starts to rain, so we're trying to cover our heads with everything we can find in the boat, and then somebody says, we pass another boat and they've got an umbrella. And so we buy their umbrella because they've got raincoats. And it's like, and you don't worry about where it's going. And then you just relax and let something happen, let it occur organically. And the more you do it, and it's the same thing with the boldness exercises, I move you up. I build your boldness muscle. It's no different than lifting weights. If you're going to build your muscles, you have to strain them, but you can't start trying to do a bench press with 300 pounds. It's going to fall on your chest and break all your ribs, and you'll probably die. But minor
detail.
Yes, as a side effect. But you can't just say, I'm going to just work out with the bar itself, because it does nothing. So muscles are meant to strain ourselves to grow. So is the brain. So are our emotions. Right. We are meant to push our boundaries to get stronger. It is the only pathway to stronger, is to be physically uncomfortable or emotionally or psychologically uncomfortable, and until you get comfortable. And that's what happens in improv. And I would get to the point, after taking, a year of classes, I'm creating scenes from a suggestion from somebody. And you also get really comfortable sucking, because not every scene's going to work. It's not going to end well, or it's going to fly up its own butt and go nowhere. And you realize you didn't die. It's over. And that's, stand-up comedians also will say this, when they say, how do you deal with this? Like when you bomb, and they say, hey, the greatest people bomb. The reality is, if you kill it or you bomb, it's over. And now then your next set is coming. So you just go, that's how it went.
Right.
And they didn't get me, or I was off. And so I'll be back.
But this is a great point around people lacking boldness, is this psychological hook that we put into that event, and we drag it around with us as if it's still right there. So you sucked. Okay. When was that? 5 minutes ago. Well, you still got it with you. You sucked. When was it? 14 years ago. Okay. You're still dragging it with you. When are you going to decide that this is now? Because if you're dragging it with you, you don't actually have another opportunity to be bold, because you're only doing it through the filter of whatever went crappy. Now, you could say, well, the upside of that is if it goes great, you're also dragging that around. Yeah, but we know the human mind is actually programmed for negativity. In case you don't know that, folks, that's what it's programmed for, because it's potential threat. It's just basic caveman thinking. So it's going to drag the negative around longer than it's going to drag the positive around. So you have got to train yourself to stop and say, that was then, this is now, what's next? And I like your idea of just incrementally, because even if you've been bold and you've had these moments of incredible courage and you've done great stuff, there's going to come a moment where you fall on your ass and you really get knocked back. And it's easy then to suddenly forget all the success you've had. So it's really important. This is why I recommend this for people. If you're working towards something, you have to write down the incremental successes. And people say, why? It doesn't matter. It was no big deal. It matters. Why? Because when you fall on your ass, when you fall down, you won't remember a damn thing you did right. All you remember is what you did wrong. And I want you to immediately open your journal and read all the incremental successes you've had, and your mind will say, but they don't matter. They don't count. They don't matter. They don't count. But by the time you've read through 47 of those little things, you're like, yeah, you know what? I'm okay. I can make it. And I love that you're doing this with boldness. It's these steps forward, because oftentimes we find ourselves in positions like we've been raised through the ranks, we've been promoted, and then we end up in this place of, and again, 73% of executives are suffering from some form of, you guessed it, right? They feel like imposter syndrome.
Yep.
Right. But what is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome in many ways is I've forgotten the successes that put me here, because I didn't get here by mistake, even though this crap you're thinking. It's like, why haven't you noted those? And I love that you're doing this with boldness, because everybody who got to that role, unless it comes through some nepotism, probably did bold acts. So bold is what changes our lives. Would you agree with that?
Yes. And every entrepreneur I know that's successful now, there's 3 failures before it.
Yes.
That they barely survived, but they mined it for information. Failure is full of information. That's the beauty of it is, experience the hit, beat yourself up for 5 minutes, get bummed out. Oh, that's really screwed up. That's terrible. This is a disaster. And allow yourself to feel it and then move on, because now you can only go forward. Energy spent trying to change the past is the most wasted energy we have on the planet.
Absolutely. So talk to us about, you spent time with one of the great charismatic human beings, definitely a bold entrepreneur by anybody's standards, and maybe one of the boldest entrepreneurs who's still a decent human being, Sir Richard Branson.
Yes.
Talk to us about being with him and beating him at chess.
So it's actually a good boldness story, because I was on Necker Island, which he rents out to people. Is one of his islands in the British Virgin Islands, and I was there with a group of business people.
Was it with Joe's group?
No, it
Okay.
was a different group, and so I ruptured my Achilles tendon playing tennis.
Oh my goodness.
And I called a surgeon, and he said, look, it's not going to heal. You might as well stay there, and I'll fix it when you get back. Don't worry, in 5 days, it's not going to reattach. And Richard would come and go from the island, and he was either there or not there, because he lives on Mosquito most of the time, another island. And so he apparently finds out that I've done this, and I'm sitting there watching people play tennis. I got my leg up, and he comes over and he says, oh, this is such a bother that this has happened to you. Do you happen to play chess? Now, the correct answer is, I haven't played chess in 40 years.
Right.
So, but in my mind, I have built my boldness muscle enough to say, oh, well, yes, I do. Well, he waves to somebody, says, get us a chessboard, get us a chessboard. And we sit down. And now all of the things I could have said to myself, oh, I haven't played in so long, I'm going to look stupid. He loves playing chess. He's really good at it. He's so famous. He's so rich. I don't know what I'm going to say to him. Instead, I just said yes. And we sat down and we played, and I played such an unorthodox game because I was remembering how to play, that I beat him.
Oh my goodness.
And he looks at the board, and I said, that's check. I said, actually, it's checkmate. And he calls me the C word, right? As in,
really? Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah. So that's my real claim to fame, right?
That's your claim to fame, mate. If I was called that by Branson, that would be on my business card, because I'm by birth, I'm a Pommy, I'm a Brit. Right. Yep. And so we know that you only get that word at the very worst end and at the very best end.
Yeah.
Right.
And he sets the board up to play again immediately, because he's very competitive.
Right.
So and then we just start talking. And And then we're having, and he's very politically involved, and so am I.
Yep.
So we were talking about this. And now there's all these 30 people, and he kept saying, he would come to the dinners and he would say, sit across from me, because everybody else is trying to interview him or pitch their business or something like that. And I'm having a normal conversation. And that's what you develop when you do this, is how to have a normal conversation and be interested in somebody. As you say, be curious about somebody else, not about what you're trying to get from them, because that stinks like desperation and it repels people. And I've watched people do it over and over again to him. And they were people coming up to me and saying, you're hogging Branson. And I said, he's asking me to sit with him. You think I'm going to say no? And he would come and find me to play chess for the next 3 days. And I mean,
did you beat him again?
Never beat him again.
No,
made him very, very happy. And he would yell at me at how long I would take to make every move. But this is, I can safely say this is the man I admire most in the world. And I got to have a normal interaction with him, like a real connection interaction with him. I saw him like a year later at one of his charity events, and he's in the cafeteria waiting for everybody. And I said, I look forward to playing chess with you again. He says, how about right now?
What? Really?
Yeah. And so we ended up playing again. He loves it. He's fanatical about it, and he likes, and again, we just have these great conversations. And I like to get to spend time with somebody you admire that much is one of the great gifts. And I could have just said, no, I don't really play chess. I haven't played in a really long time. It's like, and he'd be gone. That would be it.
That's very cool. Yeah. Everybody I know who's met him has said really good things about him. A very good friend of mine, one of my best friends, hit Branson in the face with a briefcase. Back in the days when he first bought the island.
Oh, wow.
Right. There was these very small planes from the British Virgin Islands back to New York. And my mate Damien was late, and he ran on and he went to put his little briefcase, his little flat foldable old, those old style soft leather briefcases, up in the rack above. And as he lifted it up, he slapped Branson with it. And he said, and Branson was like, go easy, mate. He just like had a joke with him, and then they ended up starting to talk, and he just goes, he was just like so normal. But I have found that I've said for years, I am very blessed. I have some amazing relationships with very famous people and very successful people. And one of the things I always say is, of course, there are assholes who have money and have enormous amounts of success, but I know assholes who have no money and no success. But what I found is, as a generality, many of those most successful people are the most generous people to people who don't treat them with kid gloves, to people who normalize a conversation with them. So talk to us just for a moment here. I just want to grasp this for people. You're across the room from whoever your hero is in business or whatever it might be, and you want to have a conversation where you've not got a mouthful of marbles and you're not sweating profusely, and you don't want to say, oh, I loved your book, right? You want to say something that's normal. What would you guide somebody on that? Because that's like something that anybody can take away. Because, you've seen interviews with movie stars who said, oh, yeah, when I met De Niro, I was tongue-tied. Or when I met this person, I got tongue-tied. It happens even for very successful, famous people. What would be a tip for them?
You have to prepare. If you have the opportunity, you prepare what you're going to say. And this is what builds your boldness muscle so that you can be spontaneous. That's what improv teaches you, is you can instantly tap into your relaxed creative brain. A perfect example is I saw Tom Hanks and his wife sitting, waiting to pick up some food in this cafe in Santa Monica years ago. And he had just done that incredible series From the Earth to the Moon. And it was actually still rolling out on HBO. And so instead of going over to try to get a selfie or try to get an autograph or anything like that, I just said, "Excuse me, Mr. Hanks, I just want to tell you how much I'm enjoying From the Earth to the Moon." I said, "I can't wait for every episode to come out." And he, you know what he says? He doesn't say, get out of my face. He says, "Thank you so much." He says, "It's such a labor of love for us. He says, since I did Apollo 13, I've just been fascinated about it. And to get to do this is just so gratifying. So I love hearing how much you appreciate it." And then we talked like a little bit. His wife was there. She makes a comment about, like, I finally got my husband back after, working on this for a few days, and we get to relax and we talk about the food at the place. And then I break away. Yeah. I don't stay for more. I don't try to get, a main course and two desserts out of it. I say, "Thank you once again, great to meet you." Shakes my hand and I walk away. And so it's like, don't be greedy, be generous. Don't be looking. The selfie is a classic example of pretending you know someone so that your friends think you met somebody famous. What happened is they didn't mind your rudeness enough to tell you, "Get out of my face."
Exactly.
Because they appreciate their audience,
Many years ago, I was walking English Bay in Vancouver with my brother who was visiting from the UK. And all of a sudden, this guy comes up walking towards us. He's wearing these weird glasses that are pretty much covering his face, sunglasses, and an ugly like a running suit, like a polyester running suit. And I said, and I stopped him and I said, "Excuse me, Robin, I just want to tell you that you have profoundly impacted my life. I see your comedy as therapy. And as somebody with a background in psychology and a deep love of comedy, I want to thank you, Robin, for what you bring to the world. Your acting is profound." And then I named a couple of movies that I've loved him in. I said, "But it's the emotion that you bring to it. It's the depth of emotion that you bring to these things, as well as your comedy, that really is profoundly impactful to me." And Robin Williams was so genuinely grateful for my generosity. And I wasn't being generous, really, but I'm sure it was,
you were being appreciative, but I was being appreciative. Not in I wasn't trying to be fan way, but you weren't out for anything. You just wanted to express appreciation.
And he shook my hand and he said, "Thank you so much. You have no idea how much that means." I didn't know at that time how much he had suffered with depression. I didn't know any of those things because this is years and years ago.
Yeah.
And he walked away. I didn't try and get any more out of him. I let him go. And my brother was standing with me, and my brother's a massive fan. And my brother just stood there with his mouth open. He was like,
yeah.
And he said, I said, "Why don't you say hello?" And he's like, yeah. And I said, and of course, my brother's walking afterwards thinking about all the things he could have said. And I said, "All you have to do is be curious and generous. That's it."
Yeah.
And in many ways, Fred, a lot of what you've shared with us today, I feel like those are the micro steps along the way. Curiosity, generosity. And the reason I need to be bold is so that I can train the muscles that support my boldness. And the muscles that support my boldness are curiosity and generosity that lead to boldness. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah. And it's, you talked about in the first part, we talked about how the brain's default mode is to seek out danger. So it gathers negativity and it stores it.
Yep.
It's why we slow down to watch an accident on the other side of the road. Is our brain says something bad happened. We need to know in detail about it.
Right.
That's why we that's why we watch the news. And positive news dies when they try to create those shows, pretty much. But you have to say, I can't let the lizard brain run the show. I have if I want to chase my dreams, if I want to die with as few regrets as possible, I have to speak up. I have to step up. I have to take the risk, not for gain, but to bring myself to the world, to say, you had something to offer to Robin Williams. You changed his day, because deep down, he's a human being who, as we know now, really struggled with all sorts of physical and emotional challenges.
Yes.
And I once you start doing that, you become addicted to that, to seeing somebody. Like when I go to a party, I immediately find the wallflower and I start talking to him and I start introducing him to people, because I used to be that guy. I was the guy looking at the
other
bookcase,
thing, right? It's so approaching boldness from a place of curiosity and courage, but also from a place of compassion, seeing myself in that person and being willing to serve that as well. So these are very good points. So the supporting roles of curiosity, of courage, of compassion, right, to support the boldness that can come forward from that. Again, being giving, being caring enough to give something to somebody else. It's not just my point, I guess, is in everything that we've talked about, is that being bold is not just for you. You will benefit, but when you are bold, you will serve at a higher level in the world.
And the highest level of fulfillment is contribution. Mm-hmm. When you get there, when you realize that, what the times I've been in tight spots in my life, and I was in one very recently, I said, wow, I am tight on money. I'm tight on all of this stuff. And I said, you know what I have to do? I got to help somebody.
Yeah.
And so I found this one person that was in my life, and I didn't realize how much she was struggling. And I just started to help her out. I just started to offer her time, because everybody's, wherever you are, somebody's having a shittier day than you. Somebody's having a worse year by a lot than you. Most of us have high class problems at the very most. Mm-hmm. And so, but I got to look back at my youth, and I was like, I wasn't bold enough to be kind, to be complimentary, to apologize. Here's a really important one. It takes boldness to apologize, because it hurts people to admit they're wrong. Mm-hmm. And you just want to ask them, it's like, are you right 100% of the time? What are the odds of that? So, but we all want to criticize everybody for how wrong they are, but we want to behave like we're never wrong. Yeah. And so instead, to be able to just say, and I've done it before. I've said something that didn't come out right or whatever. Sure. And I used to let it gnaw at me for the next 30 years or so. Now I turn right around and say, yeah, well, because it happened 30 years ago. It's like, I still got it. But now I go back and say, you know what? That didn't come out right. I'm really sorry. I just want to apologize for that. And you know what? It heals. It does. It's so helpful. It's because everybody says, and you know what? They learn the lesson of apology too. They say, wow, he was willing to just admit he was wrong. That's a really wonderful thing. And because to me, real boldness is humble, because you know how much more you can be. I still miss opportunities. I think that I replay a certain scenario, and I'll go, Yeah. This is what I could have said.
Mhm.
I made 3 bold steps and there was 2 more that I could have made. But I was so happy with the first 3 going so well that I like stepped off.
Yeah.
And so there's always true, honest, non-narcissistic boldness is you realize how much more impact you can have, how much more you can do, how much joy you can bring.
That's a great place. That's a great place for us to end. Is that again, it's a non-narcissistic boldness. In the example I teach my clients is one of the greatest thing you can do for your children is it's important to tell them that you love them and hold them and hug them. Those things are very important. But probably the greatest thing you'll ever do is tell them you're sorry when you made a mistake, because from that they'll learn that they can make mistakes too, and that they'll still be loved. And so what a great place for us to finish, to understand that you may, as you listen to this, you may have originally thought about boldness as being something that's very much egocentric and about you, but actually it's probably the thing you need most of if you are committed to serving in the world. Thank you so much, Fred. It's been a pleasure and honor having you with us. Again, before we finish up, I want people to find out where they can find out about you, about your books, your social media, the ways to hire you, etc. How would people find out more about you?
So I am Fred Joyal everything. My website is fredjoyal.com. It's Joyal. That's the same thing on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and TikTok. I'm a marketing guy. I grab my name everywhere. The book is on Amazon, Superbold. And it's me reading the audiobook, and you can get the Kindle as well, and it's in hardcover. I love doing keynotes because they're very interactive, and you watch people transform in a moment on stage. And you can go to my website, download the first chapter of the book, download the exercises if you're reading it on Kindle or Audible and you want the physical version of the book. You can even book a half-hour conversation with me. If you want to book me for a keynote or a workshop for your team, we'll talk about it. We'll see what we can do for you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Fred. And thank you for you, dear listener. Remember, those who control the meaning for the tribe also control the movement of the tribe. In business and political leadership, who are committed to positively shaping those landscapes, know that they've got to tap into what drives human behavior. And you can tap into the groundbreaking understanding of how to apply the anatomy of meaning extracted from the emotional source code. I am Dov Baron. I show businesses, teams, and leaders how to harness their emotional source code to move their tribe, because unified, actualized meaning is the one single monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for all individuals and companies. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about how you can build your boldness muscle to serve at a greater level in your world. I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.